Welcome to the channel. My name is Dani Walker. Today I'm going to be sharing with you every gown Miss Universe Philippines wore for the past 5 years. If you enjoy content like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell. If you're already subscribed, you probably know that I first created this episode for Miss USA. I thought it would be a fun episode. And then I asked you guys what you wanted to see next, and the most requests that I got were for the Philippines, which isn't too surprising. You guys are awesome and really supportive of your title holders. And so I gotta ask though, for the next episode, what country do you think that I should cover? Leave that in the comments below. Whose gowns do you wanna see? We're gonna start off with Miss Universe Philippines 2017, Rachel Peters. At her national pageant, when she earned the right to represent the Philippines at Miss Universe, she chose a Val Taguba gown, and please bear with me if I pronounce that incorrectly. But this is a really beautiful, what it looks like to me is a silk chiffon evening gown. And it flowed beautifully on stage. I think that it's sort of a bright orange tone more than it is a red. I'm not really sure because when you put stage lights on something, it can translate differently. And so I feel like this tone is very close to a brighter orange or possibly a lighter tone of red. And I can't really tell from the video footage of it. But it's lovely, I love the movement, and this gown reminded me of the evening gown that Natalie Pack, Miss California USA 2012, wore to Miss USA. And it's sort of funny that when I looked at that gown that Natalie wore, I liked it, but I hoped that it would be in a different color because her style was a very muted, soft pink that I didn't feel translated very well on the pageant stage. But then I saw Rachel's gown, and I was like, this is what I was looking for. Just something a little bit brighter in that style I thought would look great on stage, and as we can see, it earned Rachel that national title.
For the preliminary competition at Miss Universe, Rachel wore a very safe gold evening gown. When I think of Rachel competing at Miss Universe, I think that it's safe to say that most of us envision her in her finals gown, and I don't think that this one was as memorable as the finals piece was. But it was something that she did compete in, so we are putting it in this episode.
For Miss Universe, Rachel decided to go with a gown from the same designer, and she chose this really, really sexy silver style. Honestly, I want to say that it's probably one of the sexiest styles that we've seen Miss Philippines in over the past decade. And it looked incredible on her though. Like the silver with her dark hair was very complimentary. I personally really love the feather details on the bottom of it. That was probably my favorite part. But if you watch the channel, you probably already know how much I love feather details. But what I think added the extra sexiness to this gown were the side cutouts and the relatively open back. And it was just a very sexy look, sexy vibes. So she was working it though. She has such a great figure. So this gown, she rocked it. I think it was a great choice, and she ended up in the semifinals that year, placing in the top 10. I know, the moment everybody waits for, Catriona, truly iconic. So Catriona wore gowns for Bini Bining Pilipinas and also Miss Universe, and they were all designed by Mac to Mang. For her national title, she wore this really beautiful gold gown, and it had an illusion neckline and an illusion back. This gown was very Catriona. It had her signature high slit, and that's something we didn't even know, I think, would be a signature of hers until way down the line, until she won the Miss Universe title. What I really liked about this gown, because it isn't something that we really haven't ever seen before at a pageant, a gold kind of sheer mesh gown. What I think was cool was that it had these little slivers of cutouts throughout the entire dress. So it wasn't just stoned in a way that covered absolutely everything, but for me, the little details make a gown more special, make a gown more unique, and that's why I really liked that one. So she won in that one. Then she went on to Miss Universe, and she had 3 gown options for Miss Universe. She wore 2 of them, one for prelims, one for finals. So her prelims gown was very unique, and it honestly surprised me because we don't see many contestants compete in orange. So the details on this gown are incredible. The way that this was constructed was so lovely. It was so unique. And now we're seeing this trend for her of the high slit, the open back, and then everybody wondered, okay, what's she gonna be wearing to finals? Finals are not to be outdone by her fabulous prelims gown. Okay, so this gown is in actually another episode that I have, which is all about red gowns. So if you want to see that episode, just click the link in the corner. But this gown, the iconic lava walk gown, or lava gown, as you could say, truly made her look like she was in the movie The Hunger Games. When she walked out, the gown looked like it was on fire. I can just remember sitting there and just my jaw dropped with this gown. So we see the classic silhouette that Catriona seems to really like, with that high slit and the open back, a lot of sexiness going on there. But I think that what stole the show for this gown is the fact that it literally looked like lava and how it glistened. And somebody in another episode made a comment that it was really interesting that the background of the stage was red that year, and that even though she wore red, she still stood out, which isn't easy to do because you could easily kind of blend into the background, but she still stood out. And obviously took home that Miss Universe title for the Philippines. In 2019 at Binibining Pilipinas, Gazini Ganados decided to wear a Carrie Santiago gown. And the interesting thing about this pink gown that I later found out is that people have said that Carrie Santiago, and I hope I'm correct in this, is the only designer to have won 2 Best in Evening Gown awards with his designs. And so that is a great accomplishment in itself. I remember her competing this year. I remember looking at this gown. The color on her was fantastic. It was the gown itself is unique. It has a lot of couture elements. It sort of looks like wings coming out of the bust. It's not covered in rhinestones, so she just had a really pink dripping chandelier earring going on with the styling of this. The straight hair looked great with it. It was just overall very, very well styled, I thought, and because of the color, I think that's what really made it stand out. If she had gone with something more muted or maybe even a darker tone, I don't think it would have really popped on stage or been quite as memorable, but the color is unique. We just don't see many contestants competing in pink. And so that was lovely, and then she stayed with him for Miss Universe as well. So I personally loved her Miss Universe preliminary gown. I thought it was incredible. The gold fabric and how it glistened, and the fact that she didn't show up at Miss Universe in a gown that's covered in rhinestones is unique in itself. That's something we usually see at the pageant. But this gold, oh my gosh, he took it up a notch. So obviously it's similar to her national gown, which we see sometimes. It's just like what we saw with Catriona, like a similar silhouette. We carry that over because we know it looks good on her. We know it's done well. And so this gown had this similar silhouette, similar details, but it was just taken up a notch. And the fabric itself is I don't even think I've ever seen fabric quite like that metallic one on stage. We didn't get to see her recompete for finals in her finals gown. But the finals gown also, I want to note, was by Carrie Santiago, and it was a red evening gown. I personally still preferred the gold evening gown, and if she did end up making it into finals, I would have just said stay in the gold gown just because I think it's so unique. It's so, so unique. The red gown I feel like was a lot more safe for finals, and it wasn't necessarily something that we haven't seen before, a really simple silhouette. It was fitted to perfection on her, I will say that, but I just preferred the gold one. Which one did you like more? If you're watching this episode because you're preparing for your next competition, don't forget to check out the description below where I have linked Rehearsed to Relatable. It's where you can learn how to stand out in the interview room. In 2020, Rabiya wore 2 different evening gowns for nationals. First, she started in this beautiful white evening gown, which honestly, white looks so great on so many contestants and on so many stages. Her prelims gown and her finals gown were by June Candelario. She went with that designer for both of them, and the white was beautiful. Frankly, the white was actually my favorite of the 2 that she wore, just because of the way that it flowed on stage. I also really liked her styling for it. I think that's something interesting to note, that her hairstyle was different for prelims, and then when we saw her go into finals, it was still down and curled, but they switched the part, and it was a different type of down and curled look. I feel that normally when we see hairstyle changes for contestants, that you're gonna see more of a drastic change. You're gonna go from hair down to hair up, hair in a bun, hair pulled back. It's just gonna be more drastic. So it was interesting to see a more subtle hairstyle change. Now the gown for finals was really, really beautiful, and I would say this style again is like an kind of amped up version, just because I think the really intricate details and the texture on this gown made it really stand out on stage. We see some appliques and just the amount of stoning in it. It was just more intricate than I think that the prelims gown was. But do I think that she could have won in either of them? Yes. I really do think that she could have. Rabiya has such an angelic face. That's the way I would describe it. She just looks like a little angel on stage. And I feel like that ended up being a huge advantage for her at this competition, because you just look at her and you're like, ah, Rabiya. That's how I feel like when I see her on stage. So she was really, really beautiful. I'm personally a fan of the white gown. I think she could have won in either, but we're seeing the similar styles carry over though, with the silhouette and with the fabric draping down off of the shoulders. So similarities, but still differences. For Miss Universe, she had 2 different gowns, one for prelims and one for finals. And I am not positive, once again, how to say this name. Fern One of Amato Couture. That was her designer for both of them. For prelims, I personally loved her yellow gown. It's in my yellow gowns episode. Go check it out. For me, it was still one of my favorite yellow gowns, although there were quite a few people who didn't feel like it was the right choice. I really liked the train of the gown, which I don't feel got enough airtime, really. I didn't think it got great camera angles, but the way that the gown fit her, the style of the neckline that added a little bit more sexiness to it, I thought created great balance for this gown. And the color itself, just beaming, sunshine, okay? I thought it was such a great choice. Then we didn't get to see her compete in gown for finals, but there was another gown. And it was this really, really beautiful bright orange gown. This gown was great, but I personally didn't like the neckline of the gown on Rabiya, right? When I looked at the neckline, it reminded me, it really took me back to going prom dress shopping with my friend's older sisters growing up, because I remember that very specific, very high halter style of neckline that we saw a lot in the 90s. And I just didn't think that that style of neckline made as much sense on the Miss Universe stage. You can wear that neckline any other place, but I personally just wouldn't have chose it for the Miss Universe stage. But aside from the neckline, the gown itself was incredible. Feather bottom gown, different style of feathers though. Not our typical ostrich flowy feathers. I don't know what you call these types of feathers. Very unique, very, very unique, very intricate throughout. I can only imagine how amazing it would have looked on stage. I do think it really would have stood out. I think orange is risky. I think it's something we don't see a lot of in pageants, but if you look great in it, if you can rock it, go for it. Beatrice, our most recent and current Miss Universe Philippines. So much like Rabiya, here's an interesting switch that I've noticed. Beatrice had a preliminary gown at Nationals and then a finals gown, and then at Miss Universe, a preliminary gown and a finals gown. So did Rabiya. Past queens didn't. So they're really amping up these evening gowns. At Nationals, Beatrice also wore a Fern One gown for prelims and for her finals. And her preliminary gown was just one of my favorite red gowns. That red gown was, oh, it's like my heart. My heart, can I put that one on? Please, wow. So she was very statuesque in this. The shading of it, the way that it was stoned, I really liked the mixture of sizes of the stones that we saw on the bodice of this gown all around the bust. I thought that was incredible. The shape of it on her, everything about it, everything about it. I think she could have easily wore this gown to finals as well, still won in it. Now for finals, the evening gown really changed and she went with a very different neckline. We had an incredibly high slit. The bodice itself looks like it was actually a sheer fabric that they beaded over, which also adds another element of sexiness to it. And then she had her beautiful long straight hair. Everything about this was just like sleek. Sleek, super model. That's the vibe that I got from this. It was beautiful, but I'm not really sure of the color on it. I'm not sure if it's actually blue or if it's more of an indigo or like a purple. I'm not sure, because whenever you have a gown that's this shade, it comes across differently because of the stage lights. So I'm not actually sure what color this would be, because sometimes to me on video it looks very blue and then other times it looks very purple. So not positive. For Miss Universe, she decided to wear a Frances Liberon red evening gown for prelims. And when I saw this gown, I actually thought it could have been from the same designer of her national final gown, because we're seeing that one shoulder. This one's obviously different because there is a side cutout. And what I really liked about it was the addition of the waterfall beading down the arm. I loved that about this gown, but once again, super sexy high slit. And so there's this trend of carrying over what worked well at nationals to the international level. So this gown was absolutely incredible on her. I just remember, and I think I made a comment about it in my prelims video, that the hair surprised me. I just did not imagine her having that hairstyle. For me, I like to see more of the face, so I just didn't want the pieces in the front for her. And also I just love how her hair looks when it's down. I think it's just her look. It's like her signature. I love that. The national final gown really surprised me, because I feel like it's common to see Latin countries wearing golds, silvers, metallics, sheers, but we don't really see this style a lot on contestants from the Philippines. Not at Miss Universe, at least. We usually see these beautiful, bold, vibrant colors, or something like Catriona wore, completely unique. So that surprised me a little bit, but the slit was really working for her. And then interestingly enough, they kept that same element of the shoulder, like having something there. And in this case, it was this kind of sash of fabric. The gown itself, though, had some really unique and intricate designs going across the front that were bold. They stood out. They didn't blend in to the gown. But when I looked at this gown versus her preliminary gown, for me, it's kind of hard to pick from the two which one I preferred. They are similar, but I can see how they would make the choice towards the gold one. I do think that the gold one, if I think of Miss Universe, you might see the crown on her head in that gold one. Is that just me? I always think about that. I always kind of visualize. I'm like, what would this look like with the crown? So I just think the gold was a great choice for finals. And I will say, if you like episodes like this, don't forget to check out the others. As I mentioned, there's an episode that I created of all the gowns that Miss USA wore. Also, I recently released an episode about the top 10 best black evening gowns from the past 5 years at Miss Universe. So if gowns are your thing, don't miss these episodes right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.